Hello there, and as usual, I'm Aaron from Last Stand Gamers, and welcome. So today, I wanted to talk a little bit about ejector seats. Now, most of the dogfights in Space Engineers seem to end two ways, you could say. Now, first off, it's a fight to the death, and there's no way of escaping your ship once it becomes too damaged. So I'm being chauffeured in here. We're going to land on the pad. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for the trip. So before we start actually talking about the ejector seats, let's actually have a look at the ship that we're going to be mounting these on today. So this is the Hammerhead Interceptor. It's a heavy sort of ship. It's made out of complete head-to-toe heavy armor, and it's got hidden weapons within bays around the ship. We've also got two engine modules on both sides that are basically the main power packs for the ship. Quite an all-around good ship to actually have a dogfight in. Now, let's move on to the concept of the ejector seat. Now, the idea behind the ejector seat is to eject you or whoever's piloting the craft away from danger, so either away from the enemy or away from being destroyed or killed. So, in this standard sort of design, you're basically going to have to fight to the death, and most of the battles I've seen Space Engineers, both pilots have to fight to the death. There's no escaping for the actual pilot themselves, so let's see what we can do to increase the survival sort of capabilities. Now, first off, I started to modify it by using the merge block and used a simple sort of ejection device. The idea was disconnect the merge block and send the cockpit flying. So I'll just show you how that actually looks. So if we take our ship up and then we drive it forward, the idea is that we're going to release this merge block, it disconnects the cockpit, and we can continue on our way. Now, the problem with this is that there's no sort of power in, so we're basically drifting and we're very vulnerable to actually be captured, killed, or so on. But now, if we have a look at the next concept design, there was a little bit of a problem I noticed. Look how much of a ship we've actually left behind for the enemy to capture. Now, if this hadn't been damaged, we'd simply lost the gyroscopes. Look at all this area that they would be grinding. They could basically stick a new cockpit on this and have a ship if they decide to fix some of the problems with it. Now, that's when I thought I would solve that solution. So I've mounted merge blocks on both the engine bays, so when this is actually detached, the whole ship will separate, causing pretty much a crazy sort of mess, as well as making it much harder to actually scavenge. So we're going to head inside, and it's got the exact same function once again. So it's going to head forward, and as we do this, we're going to activate a merge block, and the merge block becomes active, the parts separate off, and we're good to go. A nice way of escaping in sort of a wreck sort of situation. Now, moving on to the next ship, I decided to start experimenting around with gravity cubes. So here we've got the first sort of prototype. The idea is that the gravity cube would pull you up and out of your seat because there'd be a gravity generator mounted inside. Now, this has ended up being really costly in the sort of resources department, and I decided it wasn't worth it within the end. So this was the prototype, and then I managed to cover it up underneath this sort of cover. So I'll take this one off and actually show you how it works. So first off, you would basically come into a position. So let's get ourselves, for instance, over here where we've got this power generator. And now we're in this position, we'd have the actual gravity generator inside, and we'd detach it, first by activating our gravity cubes, then secondly by activating that, and we'd actually be pulled away from the wreck of the ship. Quite an interesting concept, and the engines are detaching like before, but still are very heavy on resources, so that's why we needed to put some sort of inbuilt thruster design into the ejection pod. So next up, we have the ejection pod with the inbuilt thrusters. So first off, you can see that on our toolbar we've got the thrusters, and we actually have the merge blocks themselves. So we're going to take this one up, and now the idea is to first eject from the ship. So we would be traveling along like so. We eject from the ship. Now we'd quickly access our control bar, and we'd thrust up, and we'd be able to get out of there almost instantly. So eject, thruster override, on, as simple as pressing on and you're out of there. Now this would extremely just increase your survival capabilities, especially in the enemy area, because you'd be zapping off up into there and you'd be able to be rescued by your own team of faction. Since that's such a small little pod as well, it's very hard for them to detect. Now, moving on with the designs, we decided to add an antenna. The antenna is extremely important for actually being able to pick up the survival sort of pod, and the survival pod itself actually has a number of reactors, so it can actually survive for quite a long period of time and keep the person inside all intact, so he doesn't have to actually start building his own base or whatever just to survive out there until he's picked up. Now moving on, we moved on to a final sort of design. Now this is where I thought it went a little bit crazy, because we tried to use explosives to actually separate the shelf, but all that would happen is it would destroy the cockpit. Wherever I mounted the explosives, it would destroy the cockpit. So when it comes to constructing your own ejection seat, there's a lot of different things you want to take into consideration. The first thing I would like to take into consideration, I'd like you to think about, is what sort of systems are you going to have aboard your ejection seat? Are you going to have it powered by thrusters so you can get out of there extremely fast? Are you going to have a small cargo container on board, maybe with some tools, maybe some equipment, maybe some metal, so you can actually repair your antenna if it gets damaged within the fight, so you can communicate back with your fleet or your friends? Now that's quite a lot to take into consideration today, and hopefully it's inspired you maybe to fit your own ejection seat. But remember, don't use your ejection seat when you've got a ceiling in your hangar. It doesn't tend to end too well. So I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.